Hello and welcome to the 3,500 Miles Between Us podcast with your hosts, Jobie and Abigail.
Hey, Abs.
Hello. Where are you? Are you in Vancouver or on Vancouver Island?
I'm on the island in my son's bedroom. It's the only quiet spot I could find.
Okay. So you're back.
Yeah, I've been back and forth. Oh, it's been a crazy couple weeks. Stressful.
So the last time we talked, you had made a decision to go to the mainland 1 week off, 1 week on to save the business and...
Bail out water.
Yeah.
I'm going to put my glasses on. I can't see you. It's blurry. There's no fighting it. I'm old. Yeah, so I don't know what we mentioned last time, but yeah, the economy has just hit my company pretty hard, and so I think the last time we talked, we were talking about how you can turn fear into excitement,
and that turned out being a pile of shit.
Yeah, it lasted about 2 days, and then when I stopped IVing the podcast over and over and over again, everything fell back to the usual way, which is one thing the guy said in there. He's like, the reality is you're going to have good times and bad times, and you'll never be happy all the time, which is a good reality to understand. But reprogramming oneself is no small task, because we're so hardwired for whatever we've grown up believing.
50 years in.
Yeah, 50 years in, the old man. So yeah, it's I've actually been really struggling with like acid reflux. Like I can feel it right now in my throat, and I know what it is. It's anxiety. Because I've had to take on multiple sources of kind of work and open myself up to that. I've got like 5 more plates spinning than I normally have. And I know what that's like. It's just the incessant hustle. And I'm really struggling with just keeping things in check and just relaxing, like just realizing that it, I don't know what I'm trying to realize, but scheduling and writing things down is probably going to help me. Like a lot of times I just keep I don't know what you're like, but I just keep it all spinning in my head, and I think, okay, I got that there, and I got this here, and I got to call that person, and I got to do that. And I know I used to be in the habit of just like always putting things in my calendar, and then you kind of let it go. But I've just got so many tabs open, and I'm really, really struggling with balance and trying to I don't know, not have to close all the tabs. Like I really have a hard time with open tabs. Like I've got a project that's not finished, and this not finished, and all of these things that, and then to add insult to injury, I went on a mountain bike trip with my son. He was racing down island and took my old 90s fifth wheel, which is like an RV tow behind a vehicle.
Right.
And when I was and it was the first time, so like we plugged it into the campsite, and the water spraying out inside. There's a broken pipe. Great, shut that down, clean up the mess, and go plug the power in. None of the power works, so we're freezing cold and pitch black. All it was the trailer only served us as a roof over our heads.
Right, better than a tent, basically.
Yeah, and then on reversing it into its parking spot, I knocked the corner of it, and it exposed some of the underneath of the tin, and I was like, ooh, and I poke it, and it's just like full on soaking wet, rotten.
And when did you purchase this?
Last year.
Last year, okay, so yeah. You've had it a year already.
And I thought I did my due diligence, because I bought like I have a long list of shit boats and RVs that I bought, and it's been like a massive repair job. And this one I thought, oh, this is a good one. So Gabe's like, Dad, just forget it. Just don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Just like leave it alone. Leave it alone.
He knows you so well.
And the whole way back, I'm thinking, So I park it, and then the next day I had the whole front of the trailer ripped off, repaired all the rot. But
Okay.
when you look at it, only I know that it's better behind the metal, because no one else would look at it and think, oh, the guy fixed the whole inside of that. It's like,
Yeah.
only I know. But it's peace of mind, and I don't know, it's just like that added another thing to my list. And so, yeah, I've been feeling,
We talked earlier in the week about how we process anxiety and how both of us tend to attack it, in that I want to just close those tabs as quickly as possible. And I think you do too, whereas other people will procrastinate and are
yeah,
quite happy for things to be floating, and they kind of stick their head in the sand and pretend none of it's happening. It's interesting how people cope differently with pressure and anxiety, but I and you tend to move towards it and lean into it and go, I want to delete everything on that list as quickly as possible, which is probably why you renovate your home so quickly, because it's just another tab that you're closing each time you complete a task.
yes,
But
you're
at
like
this
that too,
point,
then.
yeah, absolutely. And struggle to enjoy the process, because to me, it's all about closing tabs, as you put it. Like, that's a really good analogy. I've not heard of the tab thing, but it makes complete sense
Like
to
windows
see it.
open on your computer or tabs, yeah.
Pop-ups,
Yeah.
all of these pop-ups on your computer screen. It's like, and when you can attack it and channel your anxiety into something productive and then close that window and tab, it feels a sense of satisfaction. But when you're
Well, does it though?
popping,
That's the thing. It's
well,
like very
they're a never
momentary.
ending,
Yeah,
never
that's
ending
the thing. Like
tabs.
the payoff that you think is there is not actually there for me anyway, because I barely ever stand back and just smell the roses and just think, oh, look what I did. Good job, Joey. That's awesome. Let's have a cup of tea, pull out your deck chair, and just stare at the work you did. No, I'm
Yeah.
on to the next open tab. Um, and I think that I've learned that there's something about that moving the goalpost constantly to the horizon that is not necessarily a bad thing, because it's what keeps us as a human race innovating.
It's
Like
what we're here for.
if you were okay with a stone wheel on your cart and never imagined a wooden wheel and then a rubber wheel,
Mm.
then we would still be with stone wheels on our carts, because it kind of serves a purpose. But so I think there's a dance between, and I'm realizing more and more that there's a dance between what we struggle with, like what our Achilles heel is, like creativity or having to close tabs or getting it. Like a lot of spouses would dream of having like a man like me or a woman like you in their life that actually got shit done. Like I can't tell you how many times we have people over and the wives or the husbands are like, yeah, you've got all these ideas, but nothing ever happens. You just could watch it as a football game on Saturday. And but I'm like, the grass is always greener, but I'm realizing that there's good and there's bad in it. Like, and I'm kind of the person that throws the baby out with the bathwater and beats myself up and says, "Oh, you're all bad. This creativity's all bad. Working as fast as you do is all bad." And there was something in that Chris Williams podcast where he talked about this. I can't remember the exact phrasing, but he says we're obsessed with upgrading ourselves. Like I'm going to go to a retreat and learn how to not have anxiety. I'm gonna meditate and learn not to stress out. And his philosophy is that it's not about that. It's about understanding yourself instead of trying to like modify yourself and like, oh, it's about, I need to be on a carnivore diet and I need to sleep 12 hours a day and cold plunge and do all this stuff. That stuff's really good. But he thinks that it's just another way of creating another tab in your life. Because what you're
Yeah.
doing is you're just, again, struggling to meet a goal. And
Yeah.
it's kind of feeding that fire in a way. And he
Yeah.
says that his kind of retreats are based on understanding yourself, which is a scary thought because as I unpack that in my head, I think, well, it's easier for a personality like me just to add another task to my huge task. It's like, oh, now I need to go on cold plunge. Now I need to do this. Now I need to work out 5 times a week. It's almost easier to add stuff, and it's harder to step back and think, what's causing this? That freaks
Mm,
the shit out of me because it's like
mm.
then you have to really look at yourself.
It's difficult because, like, our mum, who's 77, would say she's embraced the fact that she enjoys hard work and she is a worker and she's made her peace with it.
Mm.
And our purpose on a practical level for being on the planet is to reproduce and have babies and be productive, basically move things forward, which is what you were referring to, you know, about the wheels and our craving for bettering and basically leaving the world better than we found it.
Mm.
That's essentially why we're here, is to produce the next generation, to replenish ourselves and then create something. And so I think what's difficult is you're doing the thing that you were created to do, but it's filled with angst and there isn't, you know, your journey has been self-acceptance in a way of that. There's a tension there, isn't it? Because you're not always enjoying yourself. If you were having an amazing time enjoying yourself on these projects, you wouldn't be agonizing over any of this. You'd be going, I'm having a great time. What's the problem?
Mm-hmm.
The problem is you're not enjoying it and you feel this underlying anxiety and you're like, man, I'm not getting fun out of this. And yet you
No.
feel compelled to do it. But if you were radiantly happy swinging a hammer, I don't think you'd be having any of these, you know, philosophical thoughts about it. You'd be like, I don't care what anyone says. I'm loving it.
Yeah. I mean, when I look back on, like I've been thinking about what makes me actually happy in life, and when I look back on my childhood, um, yeah, I wasn't always like this, but I was super driven. Like I used to love riding my bike, like when I was racing, because it's like, 2 or 3 hours of riding a bike. So you're in the middle of nowhere, but you're on a bike, so you can't get off and do anything. Like you're fixed to your bike. It's like being on vacation. You can't build things on vacation because you're out of your country
Yeah.
and it's not
You haven't
your
got your
house.
tool. You haven't
You
got your
haven't got
tool
your
belt
tools,
with
and
you.
there's no point. So you actually relax
But
because,
probably the reason you enjoyed cycling is because you were completely present.
yeah,
You know,
I mean,
like Tony
yeah,
would say, when you're present, you're automatically at peace with yourself.
right,
So people who like rock climbing, because if they miss a move or fall, they're so present in that moment that it
mm,
releases all the right endorphins and, you know, serotonin, that they get addicted to it because they have to be present or they will die.
yeah, yeah. Extreme
And
sports are like that. Yeah,
I even found throwing mud on a wheel doing pottery, you have to be present else the whole thing just flies off across the room. And I realized when I was doing it, oh, that's why people enjoy this, is because you can't think about anything else while you're on the potter's wheel. It can be a really simple thing, but as soon as you switch your mind off and are no longer multitasking in your mind,
mm,
you're able to access almost a sense of euphoria. Like there is no angst, it just evaporates. But the problem is, I think, is when you're task orientated and you can't be present, then it takes the joy out of it.
yeah. Do you what like in your day to day? Do you feel you can access that?
I've had this strange sensation of joy recently that's not consistent.
That's an odd thing, Abigail. Happiness? What is that?
What the fuck is going on?
I'm
Um,
happy.
yeah. And I don't even know. Yeah, I think I don't feel it this very moment, but it definitely transcends my life situation and doesn't make any sense. And I think it's because I'm finally becoming aligned with
All the
maybe
brainwashing.
Well, I'm just, life's becoming more simple, strangely, even though I've got so many plates in the air. I'm not tormented by, toxic people in my life. And, I've kind of it's a shedding. So apparently this year on the Chinese calendar is the year of the snake, and it's a year of shedding because snakes shed their skin. And so I've kind of stepped back and recognized that it's like, this is shedding. I'm shedding a lot of excess, like you talk about trimming the fat off your business. It's a year of shedding things that aren't serving you, things that are kind of weighing you down. And as I do that, do you know what I've realized? And I was thinking about this today. You know how people will often say, oh, the older I get, the less I care about what people think. That doesn't resonate with me because my need for approval is still as high as it's ever been. But what I've realized is what's even higher than that is my intolerance for being bullied or coerced or manipulated. And so if I feel a sense that I'm being pushed around, even though my need for approval is quite high, very high, what's even higher for that, and that's the new thing, so it can look like I don't give a fuck and that I've reached that age where I don't care what people think. That couldn't be more untrue. That hasn't stayed. What's changed is I don't want to be pushed around anymore. I don't want to be manipulated and bullied. And that was highlighted during lockdown, where we could see how much this was social conditioning for approval and mask wearing and towing the line and doing your part. But I think for me, what was even more high was I don't want to be pushed around by the government. I feel bullied right now. And that's what I think is happening in my life, where I'm finding more peace of mind because I'm no longer willing to tolerate things that I used to tolerate. And it's exceeding my need for other people's approval and affirmation and, all of those things that have been really strong drivers for me. And I think that brings more peace of mind because ultimately shedding those people and those situations that have created a kind of suppressive environment is really freeing. So I kind of recognize that that's probably part of why I'm able to access a little bit of joy now and then and kind of feel a sense of well-being is because there's a huge shift there.
Yeah, that's your mountain to climb, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I think everyone has a different mountain to climb based on trauma.
Yeah.
Like stuff you have to overcome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, life is fucking crazy. I mean, it really is a daily struggle. So you're psychic.
Oh, yeah. So you had that appointment.
Yeah. So
we didn't talk
everybody,
about
whoever's watching,
right.
Abigail's been seeing a psychic. So you tell me about your experience with
I'm
this
really
psychic.
nervous now.
Why?
Because we haven't talked about this at all. And I'm like, was it shit?
Well, how has this psychic helped you?
It's helped me got out of a very
How'd you meet her
dysfunctional.
and how did it all...
Okay, so I said to my friend Patricia, a great friend, I said, I need therapy last year. There's something wrong with me. I need help. And she says, oh, you need to go and see this woman. So I show up at this woman's house and she starts dealing cards and I'm expecting a therapy session. And I was like, are you not a therapist? She goes, oh, no, dear, I'm a psychic. I was like, okay. And she, in that hour, spoke into my life in a way that I needed at that time because a therapist would not be able to give direction in the way that she did because they're just not, they would be breaking the law based on their therapeutic training to go and say, right, do this, do that. But I needed direction. I needed someone to say, okay, this is unhealthy. We need to get you out of there, and it gave me the balls and also the insight as to, oh, I'm in a better state than I thought I was. Turns out I don't need the type of help that I thought I did. What I need is just support to extract me from an unhealthy situation. And
It's
that she was
funny.
able to give that.
Yeah, it's funny what you say about like her versus a psychic versus a therapist. I think you and me are the same in that way. It's just like, just give me the tr just I don't want
Yeah,
to talk about unpack all the past and all fucking
yeah,
hours and hours of just tell me what I need to do.
yeah.
Get on with it. Tear the
But
band-aid
some
off.
people don't. I needed that, and I think you have to be. You maybe have had to do the work to begin with. I
Uh,
know all the trauma. I know all the this and the judgments. I just tell me what the fuck to do with my life because I've
uh,
hit a dead end.
uh.
So, how
So
was
yeah,
it?
but then, well, that's not all of it, is it? Because then she doesn't she
Oh,
stop while she's driving down the highway, and haven't you had her
oh,
like come into homes and sent stuff in
that's a
homes?
different woman. So
Oh,
she clears
different
energies.
kook.
Yeah. So this other woman will sense energies, and I'm sure the psychic does as well, but that's not her profession as such.
Uh, but
It's, yeah, I
but you
mean,
said she just drives down the highway and just
that's this other friend, Heather, who will, if a house isn't selling, she'll go into the house and clear energies, and she might be driving down the highway and she'll sense someone who might have died in a car accident who's just wandering around, their energy's trapped, they don't even know what happened,
uh,
and she'll open a portal and move them on, and she'll say, well, where do you want to go? Oh, I want to go be with my wife. She's constantly stopping on the side of highways to
imagine
do
being a
that.
passenger or
She's like,
oh, here we go
sorry,
again.
I can't get anywhere. Any white crosses on the highway and you're screwed.
Oh
But
shit.
she'll do that a lot. So
That's
that's one of
crazy.
her favorite things to do, is move people on who are stuck.
It's interesting, like the way we were raised was we would assume when we were raised that we were on the edge, right? Like, speaking in tongues and all this stuff. But actually, a box is a box is a box, right? So if you create a box that you think is freedom, it's like, oh, we're free here. We walk around naked, and we, share each other's wives and husbands. It's like you still created a box that
Mm,
doesn't allow any other stuff in. So I think the way we were raised, it was a box. It was like there is no new age. You can't do yoga
mm,
because then that's new age. You
yeah,
can't do meditation because then you're opening your mind up to whatever's out there, and you need to be focused on God and God alone.
mm,
A psychic or reading tarot cards is like, okay, you're going to hell for
yeah,
sure. Um, and it feels like still in my 50s, I'm still tearing off layers of like judgment. Like,
mm,
you know what I mean? Like, you can think about someone pulling off of the highway and releasing it and just think, oh, I'm sure there's people listening to this who just laugh and say that's kooky.
mm, yeah,
But is it? I mean, maybe
yeah,
we're so contained in this, like, give me material proof. Because if there's not material proof, I just simply will not believe it. And I think that we've fallen a long way from how our forefathers, like when you look at that show, The Vikings, that amazing history
mm,
channel show, and before they went to battle or did any conquest, they would go and consult with the seer, the oracle. And that was normal. It's the same with like psychedelics and mushrooms. They would probably just
mm,
eat them on the daily. So anyway, I feel like, yeah, I'm constantly tearing off these layers of boxes that I've created. Like, maybe there's something there. I think we're living in a world that's becoming progressively more and more open to the use of, um, natural kind of
yeah.
like psychedelics and help aids. Um,
Well, I was talking to a very Christian the other day, and I told her about this psychic
mhm,
experience. And it was interesting because I said, in my opinion, it's all raining down on us, and it's whether someone's open enough to receive that knowledge. And often those people who are psychics are on the margins because they won't get accepted in religious groups.
mhm,
You know, they're essentially like prophets. And she just said, I know that they get this knowledge, but I can't accept that it doesn't always point to Christ. and it's not coming through. If that person was saying all the right lingo, the Lord says, thus says the Lord, and it was all pointing the arrow way towards the cross, she could probably accept it. But because they're not going to do that.
I remember that feeling. I mean,
fundamentalism.
Yeah, there's a lot of fear, right? Like I remember just being afraid. I remember making so many ungodly moves in life and feeling, and I would say often in my head, God's going to strike me down any day now, you know,
But
because
it never did happen.
I was just being such a rebellious little brat, and exploring life. And in actual fact, God would, or the universe or God or whoever would continue blessing me.
Yeah.
And I remember when I left Allison, my first wife, and we were in the middle of a, we will delve into this one for sure, but the Toronto Airport Vineyard, and it was one of the biggest church movements on the planet at that time, and I remember people come up to me saying, "You're walking away from God," and I said, I said to them, I said, "I know that I'm going to get a spanking when I go to heaven, but I also know that I know that God loves me."
Can you imagine now going to heaven and that even being relevant at heaven's
Over my
gates?
knee, boy.
But now it just seems so irrelevant. At the time, it was the biggest thing.
Yeah.
That would be like way down on the list.
I know.
Oh, that thing you did 25 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's control tactics, like fear.
Yeah.
And we've learned that from our government, right? Like they can make you afraid, then they can control you. And if you're afraid of God's wrath, it'll make you do incredible things or not do incredible things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think what I've come to in regard to my openness is I don't care too much where it's coming from, as far as if it challenges is, like when we grew up thinking these things were new age or even satanic or whatever. When someone speaks truth, it's truth. Even if it comes from a homeless person on the street, they can still have wisdom. Or some unlikely situation where you would normally judge that person. It's still truth, and it still lands, and it can still change your life, and it can be exactly what you needed in that moment.
Yeah.
So when I sat down and she started dealing cards, actually, because I suppose I've become so open-minded, there was no judgment in me whatsoever. I just had to realize, oh, you're not a therapist. How funny. And then what transpired was something where I would call her one of my extraction teams, in that she had the, I suppose it would be intuitiveness to be able to see my situation, which would normally take a therapist months and months to decipher, because she was looking beyond what I was saying. And normally a therapist can only go by what you tell them. But if someone's gifted, she saw the bigger picture, and things could move a lot quicker because she had intuition or gifting or whatever you want to call it, psychic ability. So my picture became clearer to her very quickly, and therefore I was able to have the guidance given to me like way quicker than if it was a regular therapist. So that saved my bacon. I think that was a huge reason of why I'm here today.
Yeah.
So what was your takeaway?
So yeah, I booked, Abigail had told me months and months ago about this situation. You, Abigail. You told me that. And then I finally booked it. We canceled it. We booked it. We canceled it. Finally, I think day before yesterday, we managed to squeeze in a session. I was a little bit nervous. I started making a list of things, and I think you told me she'll just start talking. And so, yeah, we logged on, and immediately she just said, "You've got lots of arrows coming at you. You're pulled in 100 different directions. I don't know anything about you from Abigail. I just know that she's your sister." She said, well, I have to watch it again. She said a lot of things, but basically you're pulled in a million directions. And then she said, "You're not happy." she said, you're happy as far as like you've got a great family and you have a decent life, but there's no joy. And I was like just nodding, and and that really rang true because I haven't felt a sense of inner joy, like consistent joy, for a long time. Um, it's just been doing the motions. I mean, I'm a happy father, happy husband, happy on this property for the most part. There's a lot of things to be happy about, but I don't have like deep inner peace and joy. And she could sense that. And what she told me is that she feels what I'm feeling. So she's like,
Yeah.
I'm feeling in your solar plexus, there's this burning. And I'm like, yeah, it's actually right here. And I said, yeah, I've just been recently feeling this like anxiety, and then I kind of was, I think I was scared because I thought she might just say like, going to shut down your business in Vancouver.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. And she says, no, I don't feel you're supposed to shut it down. I feel like you're supposed to train someone up to do what you do so that you don't have to spend as much brain bandwidth going to Vancouver. And that had left a lot of question marks in my head because I'm like, I don't know anybody, and to pay someone to do what I do is going to be expensive. Um, and then she said, do you live on acreage? And I'm like, yeah, I have 5 acres. And I talked about Tara learning to be a breathwork practitioner, which really sparked her interest because she does that too.
Hmm.
Um, and I kind of said to her, am I supposed to support? There's a part of me that really likes serving, um, even other people's goals. Like I'm really good at serving. And I said, I'm willing to accept the fact that I might, for the rest of my life, serve Tara's vision, you know. And she said, but I said, I feel like I'm wondering whether that is just an escape route. Because for a long time, I've been feeling just like really unsure of myself. And, uh, and I really hide my light under a bushel. And it's funny because backtracking a bit, so I was down island on this mountain biking competition, and in the evenings we would just sit around the fire pit, and there was a bunch of people that I sort of knew but not deeply. And you just talk around the fire, and there was opportunity for me to talk about my life, and I would say that I've had a very more than your average Joe colorful life with some pretty crazy stories. And as I would, these people were talking about, like just run of the mill, fairly interesting, but not super interesting stuff. And I would start to talk about my experience or like, like mention things about things that I've done, like, you know, been in a fairly half successful band and made,
Mm.
these things. And they would just like tune out, like get up and walk off or just like tune out. And it was almost like I was kind of searching my heart as to what was I needing validation? Was I needing attention? Um, but so that kind of question mark was in me. It's like, why do people just kind of not, for the most part, not really interested in what I have to say? So then I go 5 days later to the psychic, and she says to me, "Do you find that people aren't really listening to you about what you have a lot to give, you have a lot to say, but people aren't really tuned in?" I was like, oh God, that's so 3 days ago, 5 days
Yeah.
ago. And she said, you're going to learn to just walk away or just not kind of cast your pearls before swines.
Mm.
And I felt like, I remember I went to this men's retreat, which was an incredible retreat. And at the end, they have what's called carpet time, you basically stand before these trained folks that drill down on whatever issue is in your life. And anyway, there was like 13 of us in this circle, and I was the last one. And I knew what was going on in my head. I was just like, this stupid, like, the first will be last. Um, what you had, like, I'm like, it wasn't like, pick me. Like, I'm so not pick me, listen to my story. Like, sometimes when people tell a story and someone's not listening, their volume goes up. They make it more exciting, but I actually just fade into the background, you know, and it's not a good thing. And I've realized that even like this imposter syndrome we talked about with starting this podcast, right? Like, what have we got to say? How interesting are we? And I still get it. I still feel, you know, like I recently bought a microphone and a couple things, and I'm like, when it showed up in the mail, I felt this like, what have you just done? Like, seriously? You know, this like,
Yeah.
just
I
like,
think it's because there's a lack of grandiosity in both of us. So a grandiose person would justify and why they're louder, why they're purchasing things. You don't have the grandiosity to catapult you to push through those. You know, if you were a narcissistic personality, you would talk over people and just perform and need to have that adoration. But because you don't have that grandiosity, the opposite happens. You retreat.
yeah, I mean, I think that a narcissist person actually doesn't need other people. Like, I've been around some pretty hardcore narcissists, and they don't really need people to applaud. They've got the applause happening in their own head. So even if they say it and people tune out, they just keep on going.
Right.
But I pick up on people's vibes, and it really affects me. And the dark side, it shuts me. I end up shutting down. And I think the way we were raised, you know, be seen and not heard, you know, people, you know, I mean, I don't think we were really encouraged to explore that.
We weren't the center of attention, that's for sure.
That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
And I don't know where.
So let's get back to the psychic session. So she touched on that.
Yeah, so she touched on that, and she just said, you know, you do have something to give. You have a voice. You have something to share. And I've been thinking about that a lot and realizing what a trigger point that is for me, actually. Like, this is this constant vein through my life of not, you know, I mean, like, I remember when I was a front man in a band, and people would think that we would go to a party and they would think like the drummer Sam was the front man and he was the songwriter or whatever, and I wouldn't be like, oh no, it's actually me. I'd be like, yeah, you could think that if you want, and I don't really care. And there's a good side to that. There's like a humility in that, but there's also just like this constantly, the safest place to be is out of the limelight, right?
It's a self-deprecating
and safety
kind of attitude. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
safety.
in the shadows.
In the
Just
shadow.
scurry around in the shadows.
You're actually doing all the work, but you're not getting noticed. I remember, you know, being in church, and Nolan would say, we're doing all this stuff with the homeless people, and like Jewel and different people, and would just roll their eyes saying, no, it's Jobie that's doing all the stuff with the homeless people, you bugger. But I wouldn't pipe up. I'd be like, oh, because I think I have this deep thought that, we were raised like the first will be last, the last will be first, turn the other cheek.
Get your reward in heaven.
There you go. Yeah, deep stuff. So yeah, that was a big thing that she touched on, and then she said that the next 4 months are going to be huge. Like, there's a shift, and I kind of piped up and said it feels like there's a shift in the universe, and I know you felt this, Abby, and everyone I talk to is feeling like this, like unrest, like there's this seismic shift that's going on. I mean, politically. Canada, we're having an election next couple of days. What happened in America is seismic. The tariff wars are seismic. We're in our age. There's this like shit.
Yeah.
And she said that something new is, and she says, you know what it is? And my brain is scanning like, doo, doo, doo. And I'm like, no, I don't. I don't know what it is. And I was like, okay, you just have to like, be okay, like it's going to reveal itself. But she goes, your property, you're going to have to build more structures. Something's going to happen on your property. I don't think serving your wife's vision is all of it. I think that you've got your own thing to give. And so I'm like, is it building things? Is it another business? Is it a coffee shop? Is it all this thing? And so a lot to unpack there, and I do need to watch it again and kind of make more notes because I didn't want to get distracted with making notes.
Yeah.
But she did give me one task to do, and I've tried to practice it. She goes, whenever you, because I've this thing that we were talking about at the beginning about not enjoying the moment when you're doing a job. She goes, whenever you feel that rise up and you stop, put your tools down and just sit there or stand there for 5 minutes or whatever it takes to get present. And I did this the other day. I felt this like chemical thing happening here. And I just stopped and I closed my eyes and I felt the ground beneath my feet and I felt the breeze and I listened to the birds and I could feel my nervous system just.
Wow. That's great. You got a result.
Oh yeah, immediate. And then sure enough, 5 minutes later, I got to do it again.
Yeah, you're dropping your tools, dropping it.
Yeah, because I work
Can you
myself into
imagine?
a frenzy.
Yeah.
And so the interesting part is so there's three big things that have happened to me as far as outside influence. Like one of them was that Chris Williamson podcast about fear and excitement, and then this psychic, and she said, what did she say? She said something about adventure, and it just is like that is the one element that keeps popping up in my life.
Really?
Is my love for adventure. And when I'm in an adventure, I am happy.
Yeah.
When I went to Venezuela, when I was, chasing
and
after.
Also, when we did our podcast about you being in Mexico, it really struck me how helping people, like most people do not go on vacation and want to go and finish someone's house project. Do you know what I mean? When you were talking about abandoned homes, that's not regular to be like, why did they abandon it? I want to finish that project for them. That's unique. And I think that there seems to be a common theme there with helping people.
Yes. I felt the most fulfilled when I was working with homeless people, working with addicts on the street, working with First Nations. I remember going to some of these flying reserves and waking up in the morning, putting on my shoes and my coat. I'd go outside and I'd meet a crowd of, what do you call them now? Natives? I don't know.
Aboriginals, I think.
Aboriginals.
Yeah.
And just wandering around the dirt roads, and just they weren't even speaking my language. They were in Ojibwe or whatever it was, and just giggling and laughing and feeling so fulfilled because I remember feeling I am sowing seeds of love. I don't remember ever feeling like this, like, I got to go over here and I got to go over there. I was just so and then sometimes I sit in their house and watch them play video games for hours.
And you felt cool in that moment.
I felt totally, because it was, I felt like I had the Father's blessing. Like, and I think that that's an important thing. Like as a son, like my son just wants my blessing, right? Like when I was riding a bike and I was racing in England and Dad didn't really bless me, I gave it up. And I didn't realize until just recently why I gave it up. I gave it up because I constantly felt at odds with my dad, who didn't say, this is awesome.
Didn't approve.
He never said to me, I don't understand this sport thing, but I'm really proud of you. Like, this is what you're going after, and the hard work you're putting in is that I would have ridden harder and better. I remember being in the back street lanes training and having this tug of war in my heart because Dad's blessing was tangled up in God's blessing, and if I didn't have that, then what was I doing? And
I think that's how I've been able to access some joy recently, is because I know I'm doing the right thing. And probably for the last 23 years, I've been conflicted internally, and I've severed my connection with my intuition and my gut, and I've lived a life of that.
Which is like living a lie, isn't it?
Yeah, and what it does, I think, is what happened is I lived with nausea because my gut.
That's what I'm feeling right now.
Right, I've had nausea for decades, and I thought, I'm just a nauseous kind of person. I just kind of accepted that was my baseline norm. And now I have breaks from nausea and realize that I've built trust between myself and my intuition and my gut, whatever you want to call it, my North Star. And I'm building that connection because I severed it and I betrayed myself by living a life that was not authentic to what my intuition was telling me.
Wow.
And that's what the psychic helped me see, is the severed trust, is that you have a relationship with your body and you've broken trust with your body, and your subconscious doesn't know if you're safe anymore because you violated that trust so many times that it's become a lifestyle. And as I start to build that trust up and reassure my intuition, it's all right, I won't let that happen to you again. I'm not going to betray you like I did. But it's kind of, I went to an acupuncturist and she said, your subconscious doesn't know if you're safe. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. She said it needs to know that you're not going to do that again. You're not going to betray it. And I think in the old language of fundamentalist Christianity, that would have been betrayal of God, betrayal of the Holy Spirit. You've grieved the Holy Spirit. Now I realize that is betrayal of your own body, and your body is screaming at you, or it was screaming at me, talk from the eye. And the body has no language. So the only way it can communicate with you is by physical ailments.
That's crazy.
And like that book, The God Body Keeps the Score, you know, all of that is to do with the fact that, oh, you can do whatever the fuck you want, but don't expect your body to cooperate. Your body is going to start breaking down. I would start waking because my central nervous system was started to unravel. I'd wake with the panic attacks at night, thinking, oh, I guess I just get panicky at night. That's just me. And then as I distance myself from toxic situations and people, I sleep soundly at night.
Yeah, that's great.
Because my central nervous system has started to calm down. But I realize, how else is it going to communicate? It has no other way other than you feeling like shit, having acid reflux. And she said, the acupuncturist, because the whole reason I went to her is I've got this crackling in my ear. And she said, the reason you've got crackling in your ear is because your ears are not hearing you say the things it needs to hear. You're not being assertive.
Wow.
And it's sending you a message to pay attention, start speaking out, start being assertive. And she said, if you don't start being assertive, you can expect that crackling to get worse, and it will develop into other symptoms, tinnitus, or, you know, move on to other parts of your body in order to alert you there's an emergency. Which is in total alignment with, is it Gabo, that psychologist who talks about how
Gabo Mate.
Right, the most underlying autoimmune diseases are to do with your emotional state. And eventually it breaks through into our reality and you get a diagnosis. And I think when I realized, oh shit, this could mean I have a shorter life. This is shit hit the fan for me, where I am so health orientated that I could tolerate being unhappy, living with nausea and all of the things, the central nervous system breaking down. But as soon as it came to, you might get a diagnosis, I was like, shit got real. And I realized I value health above my own well-being, but whatever it takes. Okay, fine. I value my health. Oh, when I say health, there's that fear of a diagnosis because we grow up around these floating big C words and all of that. And then, but if it's psychological, if I'm depressed for 20 years, cool, whatever, you know, I'll tolerate that. I'll tolerate nausea. It's like, well, that all leads to the diagnosis. So
how many of us are living like that, right? Like, it's, you know, sometimes I remember like Tara was raised in a home with just single parent and kept a lid on all her emotions. No brothers and sisters, no nothing, you know. So you have a very kind of like serene home life because there's no sister stealing your shit or brothers beating you up and pulling your hair, and there's no conflict. So she's always really struggled with like a raised voice. Like it immediately like freaks her out. Like, why are you,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah.
And then I often would say, like, look at the Italian families. Like, they just like talk about the weather and they're shouting.
Yeah.
But I wonder,
Any
like,
Eastern people,
yeah,
Saudi Arabians, all of those Iranians,
yeah,
really expressive and explosive.
but they get it out,
Mm,
right? And we just suppress, you know.
mm,
And I'm my whole life just suppress. Even talking to Tara about things that are really close to me, I find a hard time, like, because it's just I've been so used to this conversation in my mind, and then I only say what's been completely unpacked in my head if it sounds
mm.
great, and the rest of
Yeah,
it
yeah,
just suppress, and it makes you sick.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know what's good because I've never really. I just feel this a lot right now, and I remember feeling it when I was going through a divorce. That was the worst, like with Jen. It's
Mm.
just awful, awful time physically. But yeah,
I'm surprised the psychic didn't mention your throat chakra, because something that keeps coming up for me is the reason I'm not assertive is because my throat chakra is completely shut down.
mm,
Because also it has to be a safe environment for you to express. And if you get any indication that it's not, I've likened it to having a helicopter that just has no landing pad. And so if you think that something's not going to be well received, or you're going to be punished for your assertiveness, which would have been my experience, that shuts you down even more. And so for me, like that nausea, maybe even your acid reflux in the throat, it wouldn't surprise me if there's a link there with a shut down throat chakra, which basically
mm,
is like your voice, words would get stuck in my mouth. It's like,
mm.
I
Yeah,
can't. And as that gets loosened up, and I think what I'm realizing is the way it's getting loosened up is my lack of tolerance for being pushed around, manipulated, bullied, taken advantage of. Suddenly something rises up in me and I get fierce.
it's great.
But it's taken the heat being turned on to max for me to access anything that overrides the throat being shut down, because that would be way out of my comfort zone to be assertive and to say, actually, no, 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 no. And, oh, and it activates my need for approval. So I'm
Yeah, yeah.
still battling need for approval. Shoot, what are they going to think of me? But I have to honor whatever the thing is. And right in the middle of that is this tug of war with need for approval versus need to not be pushed around anymore. It's like, oh God, that is the battleground.
I know, and I feel like I'm being pushed on in this area. Like I feel, I can't deny there is like a crossroads in my life. You know, the fact, we moved to another place, part of the world, part of it, Canada, company, just all of it. It's just like you'd be an idiot to not see um, that there's a shift coming, and it's scared. It's really scary, and I've realized that. Okay, so we've got the Chris Williamson podcast. We've got this psychic lady, and then I was listening to Jordon Peterson and Joe Rogan.
I'm on that too.
And
Yeah.
I'm I Jordan Peterson, I can take him or leave him. Like some days he's really on, some days he annoys the shit out of me.
Oh man, when he says, "Can I tell you a story?" and Joe Rogan's like, "Sure." And it's a
Biblical.
biblical story. I'm like,
I
I
know.
don't want to fucking hear about Moses.
Well,
Shut up.
well, the funny thing is that I feel the same way, except for this time. And I
Okay.
actually started to absorb. It's almost very strange. It's like all of a sudden, you've looked at a tree and it's black and actually it's green. It's like suddenly I see, and I'm like, my heart has been opened up to what he was saying, and it is complete like amplification of what's been going on in my life, because he was talking about Moses, right, who is like just shepherding sheep and just kind of doing the almost childlike, no responsibility.
70, was he? Or was
Yeah,
that Abram? Both of
yeah.
them
So
have
he's had a
similar stories. Kept
cushy
men.
life, right?
Yeah.
Cushy life. And Jordan's always talked about, I haven't really absorbed his whole message, which is like, finding the edge and living on the edge is where we are really designed to do, and that's where you'll find the most fulfillment and be remembered and be looked upon. But most people just stay shepherding. It's like what I
Right.
know, it's simple, it makes me an income, it does it. And then Moses has this burning bush moment where his life is taken from shepherding sheep to literally going and pulling out. And I like the way Jordon, and I've been hearing this now, is he's like, it's an interesting story. So he's not like, this is the word of God.
Mm.
He's like, it's an interesting story. This is what the story goes. This is how the story goes. And it's like, okay, you need to, and for me, it's been a long process of extracting religion from the actual stories in the Bible. If I told
Yeah.
my younger son, who doesn't ever been to church, about the story of Samson, it's a
Mm.
really good story.
It's
But
because it's an archetypal story. So I think where I appreciate what Jordan's saying is Harry Potter would also follow a biblical trajectory of this archetypal go out into the desert. He went out, and the treasure is always where the dragon is. The dragon watches over the treasure, and that's the highest risk situation. So you go from the comfort of your mum's home and you go out on an adventure, the adventure of a lifetime, and you take on the dragon, and that dragon will always be capable of slaying you. But the dragon guards the treasure. And so all of these stories that we, like Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Abram, Moses,
it's
he
the
would say
hero's journey, right?
it's the hero's journey. The boy who doesn't stay at home and stay safe and coddled, the boy who takes on adventure and risks his life, but he also creates a possibility of finding what really matters. And we all, the underdog, like the whole thing is always just like, the reason these stories become so big is what we're here for. So we kind of go, oh, it resonates so amazingly.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely been, and I've realized, like, okay, I mean, I think there's always an element of adventure in, like, some people would look at my life and think, holy man, you're like a regular guy that works at the post office and doesn't do anything, or stays in the same town. Like, you just moved cities. That's a big adventure. But I feel like I, there's a call back to adventure. And that's the one thing, even before I listened to Jordon, even before the psychic, when I was sitting in Vancouver and writing down, like, back when you were a child, what made you excited? Like, I used to wake up when I was like 12 years old, 13 years old, go walk Muffin, our dog, before the sun came up, and I would be praying for God to send me out to the mission field in the jungle. Fervently. I was just dying for adventure. And I didn't understand why. Some people might go and pray, I just want a BMW, or I just want, all I wanted was to be on an adventure. And it really is just like this vein that I can only speak for myself. I don't know if everyone feels that, but I've just craved it. And like when I was on the adventure of starting Little Star, my company, all I would listen to would be like podcasts about running a business. And it would fascinate me. And it was like this really meaty kind of, when I was in the band, it was like, I remember we were poor as church mice, but there was this dream of something bigger than ourselves that kept us moving forward. Like, you're going to drive to Winnipeg, like 2 days drive to play a show that might not have anyone there. Hell yeah. Because
Yeah.
we did it because there was this scent of a dream that was so high, but we might be able to get there. And it kept us moving towards it. It just pulled. And I think I felt a little bit lately, I've just been feeling for probably like 3 or 4 years now, just lost, and the psychic did say that. She goes, you're kind of lost. Like, you're doing too many things, and you need focus. And something's going to come in your path that you need to focus on. And I was talking this morning to Adam, who's is a new friend of mine, but a friend that really understands the creative chaos, and we use that Voxer, and he was sending me a message last night about, man, I'm just feeling frustrated, and my wife's being frustrated by the constant like ideas that I've got like, and we share ideas. We get together and just
Oh,
talk about like maybe we should make like a greenhouse that does this, or maybe we should make a
yeah,
like
yeah,
millions of ideas, right?
yeah, yeah.
And I kind of said to him back, I was like, you know what? I think what with the way I feel that's going on, and it doesn't feel great 'cause it's chaos, but I think my radar is just scanning like a lighthouse,
Yeah, totally.
looking for that ship, and I think at the moment it just feels really chaotic because we're just like, what about that? What about that? What about
Mm.
that?
Well, you're
And
spreading your net out really wide with ideas into the cosmos, aren't you?
yeah,
You're basically an open receiver at this point. Like,
totally.
give it to me.
Yeah.
I sent you a reel the other day which resonated. I'm not a fan of Ed Sheeran, but he was in an interview where he
Oh,
says, never have plan B.
yeah. No.
Always go with plan A, because if plan A is not working, you'll always move on to plan B, and then you'll never do the thing,
Mm-hmm.
which is quite radical and maybe easier said than done. But it's interesting to think, well, the hardest thing is not having any plan at all and not having something that you know that you want. Like if you had a vision right now to move to Zimbabwe or whatever and help build huts, that sense of purpose, I think the reason why you would drive to Winnipeg is because the vision was already born and you had the motivation to go with it. Right now you're scattered, which is what she said, and there isn't anything particular.
It's like a North Star, right? It's like
yeah,
like
it's
the
so
wise
much
men.
easier when someone, I've always wanted to be this or do that. Well, that's half the problem solved, is that you know what you want. But the hardest thing is having all the angst and frustration of someone who needs a plan A, but not having a plan A.
You
And you're scattered.
you have to be all in, right? And
But to what?
yeah. And sometimes it's a necessity. Like sometimes you're just forced into a position. Like I have to be all in to get out of debt, or I have to be all in to provide for my family. But you and I are people that need more than, I mean, just regular making money and feeding the
Yeah,
family and doing that. It's like there has to be, there's more to it. That some people and I almost envy people that are just satisfied with that, just completely
yeah,
satisfied with their 9 to 5. Um,
yeah.
but like when I watch any movie of greatness, when there's greatness like Rocky, yeah, I'm watching these old movies. I watched Tombstone with Gabe the other day,
Oh, yeah.
and
Indiana Jones, yeah.
no, Tombstone is
Oh,
it's with
okay.
Doc Holliday and
Right, Val Kilmer,
Oh
maybe?
man, it was so sad because Val Kilmer dies at
Oh,
the end of Tombstone and he's actually dead. And
unique guy.
yeah, such a
Yeah,
great.
and Rambo, all of those childhood
I
movies.
still I'm embarrassed. I like stay back, but I tear up. And I'm like, why is that? I already know the ending of this movie, but I still tear up, and maybe a lot of people do, but it's like this. I don't feel like I'm called to greatness in a way like look at me, or maybe I need to embrace that. But
Mm,
it's almost like I feel I feel on a daily basis like we've got one life to live,
mm,
and I just want to like suck the juice out of it, and yeah, I mean, I see, because what Jordan talks about is like Moses was called to greatness. He's like, I can't speak. I can't. How can I get people? How can I go before Pharaoh? I don't even know. I stutter.
mm. He had a
He's like,
speech
yeah, don't
impediment,
worry
didn't
about
he?
that. We'll figure that out. Like, just you just obey. And it's like, holy shit, man. Moses was like that. That's wild. Like when you act, if
Mm,
that story was real, and even if it wasn't, what an insane story.
yeah,
Like you're talking about them. That's like the most crazy tyrant in history that had
yeah,
all these slaves. And he goes, yeah, I'm standing before you. I'm taking all those slaves and I'm getting out of here. Like
yeah.
balls of
But
fucking
and
steel.
that's the same with, say, The Hobbit, where it was the most insignificant, small little people who everyone thought of as sheltered and really kind of useless, ends up basically turning the fate of that kingdom. Then you've got Harry Potter, who's orphaned, who's rejected,
You got
you
Jesus, who
know.
was a carpenter.
Yeah. So all of these archetypal stories are people who basically didn't have much tools in the toolbox,
Good
but were
hearts.
still required to go out and have the adventure of a lifetime,
Mm-hmm.
which I do think Jordan Peterson, it's interesting. I saw this reel the other day where it said in the UK, the amount of young men attending church has gone from 3% in the last year to 15% increase. And all these pastors are reporting all these young guys. And I said to our sister Martha, I said, when the dating scene's bad, when men start going back to church, it's like, maybe there's women here. But what they're reporting, these young guys, is they're listening to Jordon Peterson. They're basically wanting to get their life straightened out, and they're starting to attend church again. And it's interesting because you think, okay, that's strange in this society that would be of something of interest, but I suppose it all links into this need for purpose. And Jordan's been so good at that.
You can only wander around for so long aimlessly, just free, eventually people are thirsting for something more, right? Like, what's the purpose of all of this? Yeah.
Well, my daughter Sapphire this morning, she's 18, and she said, I want to be retired by 30. I want to build a business. I said, no, you do not want to be retired by 30. Do you know that I think the average person lives about 2 to 3 years after retirement, and then they die? Because having no purpose and retiring is actually detrimental to you as a person, because we all need a purpose. And when you're not needed anymore, and when you're not useful anymore, it's not psychologically good for your health. So that even ties into this idea that we want to just kick back and cruise. It's not what we need, really.
I often think about that, and I think, why do I want to retire? It's like, it's the should voice again coming in. Well, if you've actually been successful, you should be able to retire at 55. And if you don't retire at 55, you're not really very successful. You haven't really played your cards right. And it's like, oh, well, if I enjoy what I do, then why don't I just keep on going? It's like, it's this should have, or I should, or, this voice, this critic.
It's markers of success.
Yeah, markers of success. And it's like, well, no, maybe it's not a one size fits all, and fuck everybody else.
Well, if I was enjoying something, you don't want to give it up. Like, no, I've still got life and vitality.
Yeah. And I think your body listens to that and can start to shut down, because it's like, oh, I guess we're winding up now. Life's over. Lights out.
Yeah.
That's basically
what
happens.
Send a heart attack. Coming your way in 3,
yes,
2,
you just
1.
asked for it.
But you can see how a purposeful life would keep you, your whole body's functioning at a higher frequency. I think the reason why people want to retire is because they hate their job. And they've been slogging it out in a cubicle for decades, or feeling like they're an underdog and they're an employee. I would want to retire if that was my story.
Do you find, like, I just find like my radar is so attuned to older people these days. And maybe it's just a standard thing when you get, I'm 52. I just constantly am like looking at old people thinking, I'm picturing myself in that. Like, I don't want to be like that. And that guy's got it figured out. And, it's a weird thing. Like, when you're younger, you don't even look at old people.
So
but now
far
you're
away.
Like, holy shit, man. I'm like knocking on the door to that guy. We were driving. Gabe bought this little motorcycle yesterday, and we were driving back, and classic, nothing's ever normal. Drive up the street, and I didn't strap it down tight enough, and sure enough, the motorbike just flies off the trailer and it's like stumbling down the road. And this farmer comes from over the road and helps me put it back on the trailer, and it's a bit mangled. And he's like, just this old gray-haired farmer, British accent, and just full of beans,
Really?
And I just kind of think, he's just still doing it. He's like, we're packing up this and we're moving to another farm with more acreage and blah, blah.
Wow. And the funny thing is why would you have that full of beans then if you don't have it now? I get inspired by older people that are just full of vitality in life. And I'm like, now is when I've got the energy. If I don't have it now, what makes me think I'm going to have it then? Like, they would look back on our age and give anything to to probably do a body swap.
Yeah.
Because undoubtedly they're dealing with ailments and the clock ticking. And I think the conversation when you get that old is very different, because you've done most of the things that you could ever do, and your options for what you can do are limited. You're more looking back going, what great times we had. It's great that he's still got that get up and go, but now they would probably give anything to have, say, your physical body, the timeline that you have ahead. What would they do with your time?
Yeah,
I'd be really interested to know, what would you do if you were my age?
Yeah, I mean, I often, when I meet older clients, I often ask them, like, what's your one piece of advice to a young guy, And
is there anything consistent that they come back with?
it's always the same thing. Like,
The
just,
cliches.
yeah, it's just go for it. Like, don't be so
Right.
afraid,
Yeah. They've got no fears at that point.
Travel,
Really.
do the thing, all the things we talk ourselves out of doing because we're trying to just keep the lid on everything. And, I mean, that's that phrase, youth is wasted on the young, is so true. I look at my kids and I'm like, go on, they just go, and they're just like, no.
The anxiety. Well, that's the thing that Chris Williamson said when he was on Rogan. I saw that clip where he said, it turns out all the cliches are true.
Yeah.
That money isn't the answer, doesn't make you happy. That, he just listed off that our life is spent learning all the things that every single generation before us had to learn.
And we'll say, oh,
Wow.
we trip over the same things. Like, money won't make you happy, but I'll give it a go anyway. And then I'll fall on my face. And, oh, yeah, it doesn't make you happy.
Family's what matters the most. And yet you run after connections with everyone but family. And it's just, I can't remember all the things he said, but it's kind of embarrassing to think that as we're stuck in that loop that's generational, having to learn some basic things.
Yeah, he said one thing that hit me. It was like, he's like, we're constantly looking for the world's approval when your wife or your spouse and is sleeping right beside you, and then the next bedroom over is a child who thinks you are the sun and the moon. That's all the approval you need, except you won't look at that. You'll go looking elsewhere for it. Yeah. You won't even see it, what's right in front of your face. Like, if you have two people that think that you can do no wrong.
Yeah.
And yet we'll chase and chase and chase to have a complete stranger believe that about us.
Yeah,
it's
so true.
An insatiable hunger for what we don't. The grass is always greener, It's like what we don't have.
Yeah,
it's
and that's the unfinished business of childhood, where they say you can't compete with a person's childhood. So when you meet someone, you're essentially competing with their origins, and you can't, those deeply rooted experiences and traumas from childhood, you can't expect someone like Tara hasn't been capable of fixing. She might have been able to help you along your way, but ultimately whatever happened in your childhood, she can't compete with, and you can't compete with whatever happened in her childhood. Like, that's so strongly rooted by the time you meet each other. That's your own journey. Which, at our stage of life is really humbling, isn't it, to think. But this is why I really appreciated having a psychic appointment, is because it takes you out of, in the way, the navel gazing. It's like, it helps you look outward a bit more to actual direction. Yeah. Try doing this, try doing that. It's like, okay, yeah, I can do that. And it creates a sense of accountability, because I've gone back many, many times over, and she'll check up on that. And how's that going? And you're like, oh man, it makes me realize how much accountability really does shift the narrative, because when I've got an appointment coming up, I'm like, oh shoot, what am I going to say?
Yeah. It's like you floss your teeth 2 days before the dentist for the first time, and your gums are bleeding. It's like, you left it too late.
But something that even with you and me, is when I was going through transitioning from leaving a unhealthy relationship, I remember saying to you, if I stay, will you disapprove of me? Because I was starting to feel, when I started opening up about my life, you get so much support from people going, yeah, you're doing the right thing. And because there's children involved and it's complicated, in the back of my mind, I thought, well, what if I don't walk this out? Then what are people going to think of me? And you said, well, we'll love you anyway. You know, I understand I'm a dad. I know how complicated these things are. And that actually helped me give permission to myself to keep walking and walking it out, because I knew either way I'm going to be accepted.
It's not conditional. Yeah.
It's not conditional, but also the fact that you're accountable and might not deliver on your word does not mean that person's not going to support you. And that level of support actually empowers you to do the thing.
Yeah.
As well as being accountable. It's quite an interesting, I think that's where, when he talks about your wife and the kids in the next room, those people who want you to succeed more than anyone else will still love you if you fail. They're your biggest supporters. But knowing that they'll love you anyway has the potential to really give you that get up and go and say, fuck it, I'll do this.
It's the most incredibly healing and empowering thing when you try to perform and you think that everyone is loving you because of your performance, and then when you fall on your face and say, I can't perform anymore, they say, oh, it's all right, it's all good, man. And you're just
and you're like,
huh, because in your head you're quite like, they only love me because of my it's all because of my performance. And I feel that all the time, like so often in business, in sports. You know, like, I'm sorry, man, I'm just not as good as you thought I was. You know, like, oh, that's cool, man. Oh, wait, what? You know,
because ultimately, as Chris Williamson would say, everyone's just consumed with their own journey. They care, but at the same time, they're caught up with their own stuff. So if you fail, they're so, you know, we're mainly focused on our own sense of failure, not other people's. So if they do slip up, you're like, dude, I feel that way all the time. Like, it's not a big deal. It's like, it's like a healing balm.
Yeah.
But that's a really interesting week that you've had there.
Yeah. I know. It doesn't feel any kind of resolution. It just feels like there's a whole bunch of open boxes.
Yeah.
And I have to trust that whatever that thing is, that it will become clear, because I have really, and I'm okay. I was a little bit of wishing I knew what it was, but I'm also like, I can't force it, you know.
No. Because you don't know what it is anyway.
No, I've got a million different options. And if it's something completely different, I just don't know how grand or how ungrand it is. Like, maybe I start a landscaping business. I don't know, something really boring. I don't know. But
this is what I think about, is if someone had a GPS on me and tracked my movements on Apple Maps, I do the same 5-mile radius day in, day out. You know, these spots, school, home, Airbnb, friend's house, and it's this. Outwardly, my life on that GPS wouldn't look any different if I'm living excited. Like, so if something new is birthed from a GPS point of view, nothing might change on the map. And yet, psychologically, you've shifted and become excited and joyful about your life. And that's what I find really funny, is that outwardly, no one might know that you've suddenly gone, oh my God, I get a sense of joy when I mow the lawn, or whatever it is. And that's really what it, you know, that's what's so funny, is that it's not always a dramatic thing. If you tracked my movements in the last year, you wouldn't see any difference, and yet everything about my life has changed. And it's just a funny old thing that, I think what I realise now is that what you're going through sounds similar to what I went through a year ago, where only now when I look back, I'm like, oh, I haven't had nausea for quite a few months. And I've noticed that I don't struggle with this thought process. And it's this slowly gravitational pull towards a new way of being. And then I'm surrendering to new possibilities, which, like you, haven't materialized yet. But I think where I've landed in the last few weeks is it doesn't matter because I'll be fine. I'm going to be okay.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Not all the time.
That's what we're all chasing, isn't it? We're all chasing happiness.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the whole of humanity is just chasing. We just want inner peace and happiness. And some people are way up the road of a wrong road, like fame, and just cannot stop the train, and just cannot. It's perpetuating. I think that's what we're looking for, is inner peace, so that you could just be pottering around in your garden and fuck everybody else. I'm happy. Fuck everyone else, you know.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is, right now in my life, I'm not content. I'm like, I'm riddled with anxiety and multiple things, and that's just the truth, right? And that can't be sustained. And I remember Dad saying before he died, he was in that little rental, and he was like, I just love it because there's no jobs to do.
Yeah, no responsibility.
Like, maybe I should,
finally.
Maybe Turner should sell this farm and move into a flat, into a condo. No, I wouldn't like it.
Yeah, no. And then renovate the condo.
Yeah. But I get that feeling. I get, like, it's like when I go on holiday, it's like I have way more bandwidth because there's just nothing to fix, nothing to repair.
Yeah.
You know, but it's not really reality.
Well, the thing is, Dad could say that because the end was nigh. He had actually come to terms with the fact that he was dying. So what's the point of doing anything?
How old was Dad when he died?
51.
Right. So I'm a year up on him.
You'd already be dead by now.
Jeez.
This is wild.
We just had a friend in town who owns Milano's Coffee. I own two of them, and he goes to all the Joe Dispenza retreats and like breath work.
Oh, don't tell me.
Yeah, he died.
He dropped dead.
48 years old. Throat cancer. So his wake is on Saturday. He's got two young girls.
Terrifying.
Really nice guy. Like, I remember him. He made some. I don't know him, but Tara knows his wife a little better. But
they're always a pillar of the community. It's never the arsehole that dies, is it? It's always the pillar of the community.
Just puts the fear of God in you. Hey?
I know. Oh well, where I'm staying right now, her husband died at 48, and she had toddlers, and for the last 18 years has raised these kids on her own, and become hugely successful. But man, she had to crawl her way out of a pit to just turn that whole situation around. Yeah, that's sobering. 48. Woo. I mean, in some respects, it's so much. When your kids start getting older, you're like, okay, they're over 10 years old. Made it that far. We're good, you know. But we should be halfway through it. We should have another 40, 50 years to go.
Yeah, I've been listening to this artist. He's like kind of a country artist. What's his name? Find it here. I really like him. Stephen Wilson Jr. He does this incredible cover of Stand By Me. But he writes a lot about his dad. You know, and I was like listening to it on the way back from town today. And I got tearful because I just picture Gabe and Raven and my boys. Like, I know how much they would miss me when I die, and how much pain that's going to be for them. And that's hard to bear. You know, it's a part of their journey, but oh man.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, when you create a lot of love, you also create a lot of pain.
Yeah.
Right? Because they wouldn't miss me if I was an alcoholic who beat the shit out of them.
Although, when I spoke to this woman who was a CEO of a hospice, she said, usually the people who have the most fractured relationships with their parents struggle the most when the parent dies because of guilt and it's often the ones who have a really rich relationship that can just go, you know what, no regrets. We had an amazing relationship. I thought that was kind of interesting, but yeah, it's yeah. On that note, I'll look him up actually.
Yeah,
Steve.
It's here. I'll show you
because
a
there's
picture.
very few country artists that I like. Steve Williamson. Okay.
Can you read that? Because it's back to front when I see it.
No, I can see it the right way.
He's kind of cool.
Okay.
He
There's
does.
very few country songs I like.
I think I shared it, put it on my story. Like he did this live Stand By Me. It's so good. But yeah,
I will put that when we post this as the music behind, because I'm going to start with the Instagram posts, do music to accompany.
Lovely.
Love
you.
Love you. Talk to you soon.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.